God, it makes me happy. Doesn't matter spring or fall. Barberville's where the music is happening. I can't wait till Barberville. Can't wait, I can't wait. I can't wait till Barberville. Can't wait, I can't wait. I can't wait till Barberville.
Hi everybody, my name's Deborah West. I'm the Executive Director here at the Barberville Pioneer Settlement. And today we are bringing to you our fourth in our series of History Matters. Today we're going to cover the Astor Bridgetender's house.
Good morning and welcome to the Bridge House here at the Barberville Pioneer Settlement. This house was built in 1925 and it stood on the west end of the Astor Bridge where the Highway 40 went over the St. Johns River. This house was the home of the men who were called the Bridgetenders, the men that would go out and open up that swing arm of the bridge in order to let the river traffic flow. It was the link between Lake County and Volusia County, and it's believed to be the only covered bridge that we have in the state of Florida, or had. This house has seen its share of joy and sorrow. The bridge connected two small towns, Astor, which was named after William Backhouse Astor Jr. His son was John Jacob Astor IV, who at the turn of the century was a millionaire and spent his winters in this area before going down on the Titanic. Volusia was founded in 1818, one of the very first communities in Florida. Originally, it was a trading center for river traffic and later a fort in the Seminole Wars. It also served as a refuge for Confederate guerrillas during the Civil War. Between 1800 and 1925, Astor and Volusia, the two towns on either side of the St. Johns River, well, they were stops for those steamships going up and down, taking the passengers and freight. They also had a free ferry that went between the two of them. It would have been carrying wagons, horses, livestock, going back and forth between the two. Eventually, it would even have cars on the ferry. And then in 1925, when they built the new bridge, why, that bridge too heard the rumbling hooves of the cattle as they were taken across back and forth going to the open range. But soon it would be a bustling thoroughfare. What a thrill the new bridge must have been to the people anxious to be on the move in the 1920s. The Florida land boom, which really started after World War I and brought so many people rushing to Florida to get their piece of heaven, also brought a multitude of cars that would line up honking furiously for that ferry that was originally there. Ironically, the push to build the bridge was a little late, as the land bust occurred the same year as the bridge was built. Curtis Lucas served as a bridge tender for more than 20 years, and he was the last bridge tender to live in the house. He was interviewed years ago and said his grandfather, John Melvin Lucas, came to Florida in the 1900s to work in the turpentine industry near Astor. Curtis's father was a commercial fisherman and shipped fish to Jacksonville down the St. Johns River. Curtis started working as the bridge tender in 1941, but in 1942, during World War II, he enlisted in the service. At that time, his father took over and stayed as the tender for more than 16 years. When he retired, Curtis took over again until 1982, when the bridge, of course, was taken apart. When asked if anything interesting had happened at the bridge, he said, way back when, one time Al Capone stopped and chatted with the bridge tender at the time. During Lucas's time as a tender, a car drove off the bridge. Lucas tried to save the people in the car, but it had gotten down into the foliage in the river, and the car had power windows, and Lucas could not get to the people in time. There were also 3 generations of Johnsons that served as bridge tenders. Lucille Johnson Turner was born in the bridge house, bringing lots of joy to her family. She remembers how quickly her father, who was the bridge tender, learned the sounds of the different boat horns that blew for him to open the bridge. When it came time to replace the old bridge, the bridge tender's house was no longer needed. Soon after learning that it was to be demolished in 1978, Laura Bell spearheaded a drive to obtain the house and canopy for public display. It took 2 years of letter writing to convince the State Department of Transportation, but eventually she persuaded them to donate the building to the settlement. Some people wanted to know why anyone would want to keep the old building, and Laura Bell responded that it was a great day for the settlement and that they thought the old building would certainly add to the historical museum. She stated that one of these days, that old building will be of real value to the entire community. Getting permission from the state was one thing, but once they got the go-ahead, then Laura Bell had to get approval from the residents to put the canopy over Lightfoot Lane, which at that time was an open road passing through the property that was once owned by the Volusia County School Board. It was years later that the settlement became a standalone nonprofit and the road was privatized. However, the house could not be immediately moved to the settlement, as it was too large to fit over the old bridge, and so it had to be moved to the property of the Blackwater Inn, which was right beside it. When the Blackwater Inn was sold, it had to be moved again to the Lucas property. For the first move, it cost $2,500, and the second was another $2,000. After that money was raised and spent, then again they had to raise enough money to cover the final move to the settlement, as the settlement's coffers were nearly depleted. Laura received no financial help from state or federal historical agencies, so she was once again reaching out to the community for assistance. For Laura, fundraising had become a way of life. She stated that fundraising has gone on for so long and it seems as if it will continue. But along the way, we've made many friends. There were multiple fundraising avenues, from letters and Save the Bridge flyers to ads in the paper. Picnics and dances were held at Ponce de Leon Springs. They even had Save the House parties with bluegrass music and plenty of food. One was described as a shindig going on in the parking lot of Lee's Grocery in Astor from 4 p.m. till the cows come home. And on Sunday, they would start right back up after church let out. With enough money raised, T.A. Youngblood movers were called again. Hindering the move were 24 power lines and telephone lines on Highway 40, so power and telephone crews had to pace the journey, lifting up the lines to allow the 24-foot-high building to pass. They even blocked off the entire 6-mile stretch of 40 to vehicle traffic, which all had to then be rerouted. Finally, on Wednesday, September 10th, 1980, the house traveled that 6 miles by trailer, averaging 1.5 miles per hour, straight down State Highway 40. It took them 4.5 hours, setting out at 11 a.m. and finally reaching the settlement about 3:30 p.m. I have been digging in the museum archives again, and I found an interesting article from the 1980s. It was talking about a feud that was happening between the residents of Astor and the residents of Volusia. As the story goes, it was back in the late 1800s, back when Astor on the west side of the St. Johns River and Volusia on the east side. This was a time back when you could see the billowing smokestacks of the big steamships that were coming down the St. Johns River, boats like the Osceola or the City of Jacks, and later boats like the Pastime. This was a time back when there was just a free ferry that went between the two towns. Long ago, it is said that Astor residents generally liked their neighbors in Volusia, but they said the Volusia residents tend to have an aggressive nature to the peaceful people to the west, whereas Volusia residents used to say, well, yeah, they generally liked Astor residents, but that Astor's history was steeped in moonshine, and they had a belligerent attitude towards the gentility of the East. Astor resident Willard Johnson, we'll hear more from him later, but he said them were fighting words. He said that if there was bootlegging going on in Astor, well, their best customers were coming from Volusia. Well, the feud seemed to come and go over the years until Saturday night on February 16, 1935. That's when the feud hit another boiling point, the night that Robert Dillard shot and killed McQueen Johnson. Well, that killing fanned the flames between the two towns and counties up to the point where it actually became an inter-county feud. For you see, when the mortician arrived, the body was laying half in Lake County and half in Volusia. Whose jurisdiction was it going to be able to try Dillard for this murder? DeLand resident, and he was actually the mayor of that city, James Summerhill, he was the mortician. When he arrived on the scene, he took the body and took it on back to DeLand in Volusia County. He was going to hold an inquest and then have the burial at 2 p.m. the next day on Sunday. Well, Lake County objected to that. They held their own inquest, holding up the burial until 8 p.m. that night before old poor Johnson was able to be laid to rest. Both families had different stories about what happened. It was a dark night. It was hard for anyone to be able to see. They saw what they wanted to see, and they told the story as they wanted it to be. Well, they said that McQueen was shot in the back. The other family said no, that Robert stepped aside and he fell in front of him. Not knowing really what the story is now, but we can certainly say that there was bad feeling between the two families. Ironically, neither county got to try Dillard, as court records show that even though there was a grand jury in Lake County, there was never an indictment handed down. Now, Willard Johnson, whom we had heard from earlier, he was McQueen Johnson's son. He said that it was all a bunch of gossip about the feud between their families, and that his family felt really bad about what had happened, and that it was as embarrassing to them, the Dillards, as it was painful to the Johnsons. Interestingly, Robert Dillard was actually struck by lightning and killed while he was working in a field several years later. Divine justice? Nobody really remembers exactly when the squabbling over the river started, but in the early 1980s, the politicians were at it again. That flare-up was caused by the naming of the new bridge. The Volusia-Astor feud made it all the way to the Florida State Legislature, as residents on both sides of the battle got up petitions over who would get the name, the new bridge. The bridge had been called Astor Bridge for nigh on 50 years, and though Volusia residents thought it was about time for that to change, and they mounted a fierce campaign, the bridge is still called the Astor Bridge today. The feud is now history as Astor and Volusia work together to promote ecotourism in West Volusia County along the Black Bear Scenic Highway and along the St. Johns River.
Gateway on the St. Johns, this bridge house was a home to tenders and their families, but now it stands alone. Its history tells a story, a remnant of the past, of simple lives and simpler times, whose time ran out too fast. Built in 1926, with Astor in decline. Not long before the hotel burned, they closed the Eustis Railroad line. The cars on State Road 40 would mostly pass straight through, while boats moved north to Jacksonville and south towards Sanford too. The watchmen on the river along the St. John's flow, who manned the gate and raised the bridge, watched road and river traffic grow. The old St. John's caregivers found shelter in this place. It served them well, this old bridge house. It stood for years with grace. The stories this bridge house could tell, the things that it has seen, the fateful night in 35, Bob Dillard shot McQueen, or the time the car ran off the road into the river deep and sank beneath the hyacinths where 3 poor souls now sleep. With Volusia on the eastern side, Lake County on the west, the bridge house sat between the two, forever you might have guessed. But the wheels of progress also turn, and time moves on apace, and like the old gives way to new, the old bridge was replaced. 1980 marked the year they moved the house away to the old Blackwater Inn, but there it would not stay. In 82 in Barberville, the bridge house found a home, and now it greets the visitors with a history of its own. Gateway on the St. John's, whose time again has come, a memory of days gone by. This bridge house has a home.
And now the Bridge House is our welcome center. This is the first building that you will come to when you come to the settlement. You'll come in here to pay your nominal entrance fee.
Good morning and welcome to the Barberville Pioneer Settlement. We do have a nominal fee when you come to visit. Adults are $8, seniors and veterans are $7, and children are $4. We do have a self-guided tour. There are 19 buildings on our property for you to look at as you come in.
The Bridge House here not only serves as our welcome center, but it has a store that has items here that are available for purchase. Sometimes this is for when our country store is not open. We sell a lot of products that we make here at the settlement. We hand make these rugs when we have our school kids here and doing their programs. They help to make these rugs and then we sell them in the store. We have candles, which they also help make. We have items here. We have our peacock feathers from our peacocks. Here's a set of those hand-dipped candles that the children make. that are available for purchase. They're only $3.76 plus tax. So $4 for a nice set of hand-dipped candles. As you come into the Welcome Center, you'll come in and we have two rooms that are set aside. This one is for the Black Bear Scenic Highway. Our other room we have is for the corridor of the lakes, the Heritage Corridor of Lakes, which goes all the way down West Volusia County of the lakes that are along there. We also have in the Welcome Center, we do have display cases of some of the artifacts that we have gathered here at the museum. Most of these have been donated to us at one time or another, showing the artifacts that have been donated to the museum over time. They represent a lot of the history of Central Florida and especially Volusia County. Arrowheads from back when the Seminoles were here. The shells that they used as tools and implements for eating. And then we have more things that come from the Indian mounds. There are shots. This could have been from the Civil War. There's buttons and buckles. Lots of different artifacts that you can find here at the museum.
Thanks, Joanna. Wasn't that great? And just as Joanna said, Laura Bell, it became a way of life for her, was fundraising. And even today, it's a way of life for the settlement to do fundraising. It's a huge part of what keeps our doors open. And we appreciate all of our folks who have helped us out in our Fund the Gap fundraiser. And in addition to that fundraiser, we do a lot of other things as well. And I wanted to show you today, we have our Songs of the Settlement CD, which you may hear some of the music in the background of some of these History Matters productions. And this CD was produced by several volunteers, musicians that perform here at the settlement. It was completely donated, all of their music, all of their time, all of their talents, and we're so thankful for them. And the CD you can get on our website in our store. It is $22 plus tax and shipping, and we would love to be able to send one out to you, and it helps us out here at the settlement to keep our doors open. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in today and watching, and we'll see you next time on History Matters. Bye.
The music is happening.